Good afternoon, Manitoba. I'm Larry McIntosh, and I'll be your host for the next hour. Now, normally our show airs Saturday mornings from 8 to 9, but we had the honor of being asked to do a special show for Good Friday. Thank you for tuning in. It's Easter weekend, which means the Easter Bunny will be arriving on Sunday. I hope you have some carrots put out for him or her. We don't really know much about the Easter Bunny, but either way, I'm sure he or she loves carrots and also vegetables, so make sure you put some out for the Easter Bunny. For the last several weeks, we've introduced a new feature at the beginning of each show where we look at interesting events this day in history. So let's have a look back at a few. On April 3rd, 1860, the Pony Express service began. This service was a new, faster mail service using riders on horseback instead of the traditional stagecoaches, reducing the delivery time by 10 days. Now, I've heard of the Pony Express, but what I was surprised when we were researching this is the Pony Express was only actually around for 1 year, and then it closed because they suffered so much losses from having the riders go across the country. On April 3rd, 2010, more recent history, April 3rd, 2010, Apple released the first iPad. I find that hard to believe because that's only like 5 years ago, and it seems like iPads have been around a long time. And Apple actually sold 3 million iPads from April to June, 3 months, back in 2010 when they first introduced it, 3 million units. My guest this morning is Margaret Redmond, President and CEO of Assiniboine Park. Good afternoon, Margaret.
Good afternoon.
Assiniboine Park.
Assiniboine Park.
Assiniboine Park.
Mm-hmm.
See, Assiniboine, anyway, we went through that last time you were on the show. We're not going to do that again.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Thank
You
you
ready
for
for the
having me?
long weekend? You're all set?
I am indeed.
You don't go to the park on the long weekend like other people probably go to the park on the weekend, and you avoid the park on the weekend?
I do. Well, I have two children, 9 and 13, so I do go to the park on weekends and the zoo, and it's still a favorite spot for all of us, and I try very hard not to sort of be taking a checklist everywhere I go and just try and see it through the eyes of a visitor as opposed to an employee.
That's hard, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still a beautiful place. Still my favorite place in the city.
It's a jewel. It's
It
really
really
a jewel
is.
of our city. So tell us, I think most people know about the park, but tell us a little bit about what's all at the park.
Well, we have a wide range of things for people to enjoy. The park itself has the incredible nature playground that is just getting ready to be as busy as it gets in the warmer months. There's the beautiful duck pond that was a favorite skating destination this winter, and the toboggan slide that's beside that. The Qualico Family Center, that's just a really vibrant gathering spot there. During the day, the park cafe is open for breakfast and lunch, and in the evening, there's all sorts of corporate or family or wedding events that happen in that building, which is just a stunning building nestled in the woods there. We have the conservatory, where there's always some very unique and beautiful displays inside the conservatory, and in the summer, the beautiful gardens around the conservatory. There's sports fields and picnic sites, and the music and movies at the Lyric Stage, and that's just in the park. Obviously, our beautiful English and formal gardens. And then, the zoo is just a whole other topic of conversation.
And we're certainly going to talk about the zoo,
Absolutely.
specifically polar bears. We're going to talk about an upcoming
Okay.
segment. We want to spend some time because Shelley and I really like polar bears.
I love
We're
polar bears.
going to come back to that. But it's really, and I said it earlier, it's a jewel in our city.
It
But
is.
how many major cities have something like that in the middle of the city, basically?
I'm going to be very bold and say that there isn't anything like it in Canada. I think there are some examples in the United States, like the Central Park in New York, that are similar in terms of the span of the type of attractions, the size of the park. But I would say we are unique in Canada, and I think we take it for granted. This was a very, very visionary move on the part of the council that over 100 years ago created that space. And, it was so critical that we step in with a plan to save it because, even 7 years ago, it was on a very bad path and needed to be revived and brought back to the jewel that it was, because it is very unique to have something like that in the middle of a city.
And I think I'm pretty positive when it comes to great things in Manitoba, and I like to talk about it. But quite often we have guests in, whether it's customers or family come in, we'll take them for a drive down Wellington Crescent through the park. And people are wowed by the park. And you think, you know what, you take a step back, we really are fortunate for what we have here. And we take a little bit for granted because it's always there.
Yeah, I think that's very true, Larry. And it was once it started to revive and people came back to see what was happening there, that I think people really started to appreciate what they had all along. I get to see it through the eyes of people from all over Canada, all over the world, some, who are dignitaries. So we had, Prince Charles and Camilla visit us last summer, and
Right.
to see it through the eyes of people like them who have been to some of the most beautiful gardens in the world, and for them to find it as remarkable as they find it is always a really good reminder to me that we have to look after this place because it is a very unique gift that we were all given as citizens.
Does the park get busier as weather gets nicer?
Oh, absolutely. Though, since improving the park, putting more focus on it as a winter destination, creating things like the family center, it is now a vibrant place in the winter as well. Even on some really harsh days, there's still some really hardy souls out there jogging and walking their dogs and cross-country skiing. But absolutely, the summer months are the busy time in the park without question.
And the speed limit through the park is 30 kilometers an hour, right?
It is. Have you learned that
I learned
in
that.
official capacity?
I was going 40. I thought, oh, it's 50. And this nice
30.
officer pulled me over and said,
Yeah.
it's 30. And he did not give me a ticket,
Oh,
warned
that's
me.
good.
And now I know. That's why I
Yes.
thought I'd share that.
Sure, because it's not meant to be a thoroughfare. It's a park, and we want people to be safe and
Absolutely.
lots of children. And yes, so I'm glad you learned that lesson.
And
I
I'm just
didn't
sharing
pay
with
a
our
price for
listeners.
it.
No, absolutely. And he loved the park, and he likes our recipes in the newspaper. So
Oh, good.
hey, it was nice
Good to
conversation.
be a celebrity.
All things considered. We'll be right back with Margaret Redmond from Assiniboine Park after we take this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Normally our show airs on Saturday mornings from 8 to 9, but we had the honor of being asked to do a special show for Good Friday. Food and Friends Radio is also on TV. Each radio show is filmed and will be posted on Mytoba.ca tomorrow. So if you want to see the TV version of this show or previous radio shows, please visit Mytoba.ca. Thanks to 680 CJOB's Nicole, who produces our show, and Riley, who operates the camera, as well as the teachers of the Broadcasting and Media Arts program at Techvoc High School. You can also listen to an audio podcast of Food and Friends at SoundCloud.com and at the iTunes Store. So please just do a search for Food and Friends with Larry at Mytoba.ca or SoundCloud.com or the iTunes Store, and all the shows will come up for your listening or viewing pleasure. It's very important for me to mention that Food and Friends is only available because of 680 CJOB and its advertisers, so please tune in to 680 CJOB or listen live at cjob.com. I mentioned on last Saturday's show that Shelley and I would like to ask you out for dinner. Yes, dinner. We'd like to invite a lucky listener and their guest to join us for dinner. The restaurant we've chosen for this week's contest is the Gates on Roblin. If you'd like to enter your name into a draw to join Shelley and I for dinner at the Gates on Roblin, please email me at larrymcintosh@peakmarket.com by 4 o'clock today, and in the subject line, put Easter. Please feel free to put any comments in your email about the show or any suggestions you might have. We'd love to hear feedback from our listeners. And I want to take a moment to thank the great folks at Gates on Roblin for donating this dinner for 4. Again, if you'd like to enter your name into a draw to join Shelley and I for dinner at the Gates on Roblin, please email me at larrymcintosh@peakmarket.com by 4 p.m. today. So it's McIntosh is MC, and it's Peak Market, not Peak of the Market, peakmarket.com. And in the subject line, put Easter, and we'd love to go out to dinner with you. We're back with Margaret Redmond, President and CEO of Assiniboine Park. So we're talking off air about bears. And as I mentioned in the first segment, Shelley and we've been to Churchill, we've seen the bears. They're just cuddly, and I know they're not.
No, they're not.
But you have quite a few bears in there, right?
We now have 7 bears.
7?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, many of whom were rescued from certain death in the north, and that includes Storm and Aurora and Casca and Blizzard and Star are all bears that were part of our bear rescue program.
So let me talk a little bit about the bear
Yeah.
rescue program. What's that? These are bears that are orphans?
These
or?
are bears that are identified by Manitoba conservation officers as clearly orphaned, and polar bears cannot live on their own under the age of 2. They are completely reliant on their mother. And so each bear that was rescued has a different story. Some were found clearly with no parent in sight, and some were found with evidence of a mother having been killed nearby. So once these orphans are identified by Manitoba Conservation, they have contacted us to be sure that we had the ability to take these bears, bring them back to health, and keep them in the International Polar Bear Conservation Center enclosures as they're acclimatized, accustomed to humans being around them, to make sure that it's not a stressful thing for them to be part of the larger zoo exhibit, bring them back to health, and eventually join the other bears in the beautiful Journey to Churchill exhibit. But we're just so proud that we've played a part in saving these beautiful, beautiful animals. The top of the food chain, an iconic animal for Manitoba and Canada, and it's so sad to think that some of them might not have made it. Sometimes by reasons often created by climate change, and so we think they can now live a full life in Journey to Churchill, which is an exhibit that allows us to tell the story of the environmental challenges that these animals and other northern wildlife face, and at the same time use them as ambassadors for their species to inspire people to care about saving their environment. And in a perfect world, there would be no orphans that need our help. And we'd like to play a role in maybe bringing us to that day.
And the reason I ask you about that is because I've talked to people that say, we're pulling polar bears out of the north and bringing them to the zoo. And that's not the case at all. This is more than likely they wouldn't have survived if this hadn't happened. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's an important story. I know you've told the story, but I think it's an important story to emphasize.
Yeah, and and that was a key driver behind why the province chose to be a major funder of the Journey to Churchill exhibit, because they saw that opportunity. We are losing polar bears up north, particularly in the fall when they're waiting for the ice to freeze over so that they can hunt again, and that's taking longer and longer, and bears are starving, or they're coming into town because they're starving, and things happen, and that's when adult bears get killed for safety reasons, and cubs are orphaned, and that's just a reality, and that's been happening long before we created Journey to Churchill. But this just provided an opportunity to save some of the bears that otherwise would not have been saved. We don't make the determination of whether they are in need of saving. That's determined by conservation officers whose first choice is to leave the bears in the wild.
Absolutely.
The bears come to us only in the most extreme circumstances, and the hope is that they will, as I said, be ambassadors for their species.
And I think that's important. The whole exhibit and everything around it is educational as well.
It is. It was designed to be a very immersive experience, so you very much feel as if you are in northern Manitoba when you're there. They're very, very large spaces that the animals are in, but it's all interpreted to tell an environmental story, a conservation story as well. And so with the thought that if you see these animals and fall in love with them, which you will, not just the polar bears, but the muskox and the Arctic fox and the caribou and the wolves, that it will become very real to you that these incredible animals are threatened, and that we as humans can make some very simple changes in our lifestyle that could perhaps improve their environment.
We're talking with Margaret Redmond from Assiniboine Park. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Normally our show airs on Saturday mornings from 8 to 9, but we had the honor of being asked to do a special show for Good Friday. Now it's time for our recipe segment called Now We're Cooking. You don't need to write this recipe down, as this is today's recipe of the day at peakmarket.com, As well, we're going to be sending it out through Peak of the Market social media sites today. It'll be on Facebook, Google+, and Twitter. Today's recipe is fried rice. Fried rice. This recipe isn't too long and seems fairly easy. Here's what you need for ingredients. Uncooked rice, butter, chopped onion, chopped carrot, chopped green onions, sesame seeds, eggs, soy sauce I should say, and salt and pepper. And this recipe will serve 8. And again, if you're interested in viewing the full recipe, it's the recipe of the day at peakmarket.com. We'll be right back with Margaret Redmond, President and CEO of Assiniboine Park. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Normally our show airs on Saturday mornings from 8 to 9, but we had the honor of being asked to do a special show for you today on Good Friday. No matter what age you are, I think everyone has a favorite Sesame Street character. Peak of the Market Sesame Street potato and onion bags feature Elmo, Big Bird, Grover, Oscar, Abby Cadabby, Rosetta, Cookie Monster, Bert, and Ernie. 9 different Sesame Street characters in all. I hope you had an opportunity to see our bright and colorful potato and onion bags at your favorite store. Along with the characters, you'll still see the Peak of the Market logo, so you're guaranteed the product is grown right here in Manitoba. We're very pleased to partner with Sesame Street on the Eat Brighter program. And the Sesame Street Eat Brighter program is all about encouraging children and adults to eat more fruits and vegetables. So the next time you see your favorite Sesame Street character, I hope it reminds you to have an extra serving of fruits and vegetables. We're back with Margaret Redmond, President and CEO of Assiniboine Park. Margaret, what is your favorite Sesame Street character? You're ready for this question because, you know, it's Food and Friends. Sesame Street's going to come up.
Grover.
Grover. Good choice.
Thank you.
That's one of the ones we have.
He's cute and lovable, but he has kind of a bit of an irreverent sense of humor every once in a while, so I like him.
Did your kids grow up with Sesame Street?
My older daughter did. My younger daughter, who's 9, not so much, but I certainly remember Sesame Street, and yes, my 13-year-old was an Elmo fan.
I read a stat that 49% of people that watch Sesame Street are adults. Because I guess the mom or dad watches with the kids, right? So that makes sense to me.
Absolutely.
And I think 70% of the people that watch Sesame Street are online now. They do it online versus on television.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, I see that with my own children, for sure.
Let's get back to the park.
Okay.
So we talked about polar bears, and I could talk about that all day, but there's so many other things. There's penguins there now, isn't there? Penguin Cove?
The penguins have moved on.
They've moved on.
They were there for last.
Couldn't handle the weather, or?
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
Sorry.
They had other places to be.
I didn't realize that. Sorry.
No, they moved on, but we've got many, many more other fabulous animals. And this summer we have a new exhibit coming. So Journey to Churchill obviously will be in full force again this summer. But we have the McFeeters Heavy Horse Center will be opening this summer, which will be a bit of a rural experience for people, but to see these magnificent heavy workhorses. We have 4 Percherons that are just beautiful animals. And they'll be there in a beautiful barn. We can see how these horses are cared for. You can take a little wagon ride in the summer within the zoo property, and in the winter these horses will be used to pull sleighs in the park for a bit of a winter experience.
This is a permanent
thing?
Yes,
absolutely. So at the far sort of north end of the zoo, we'll have created a little pasture and paddock and a beautiful barn, a very pastoral scene that we think will be just a great addition to the zoo experience and a celebration of the agricultural history of Manitoba and the role that heavy horses played in really settling this province. Do
exhibits come through? Like I talked about the penguins, and I didn't do my research there properly. Sorry, but
okay.
Do other things come through? Other animals come through, or is it more?
Well, that was a very unique opportunity that we took 2 summers ago when we knew we were going to have heavy construction happening in the zoo, and we needed to give people another reason to come. We hope that in the future, one of our exhibits that we're just in the design phase of now. That will be sort of a very much what we're roughly referring to now as a kids' discovery zone that will include bringing back the old Aunt Sally's farm type concept, a lot more animals that you have contact with. But we hope to include in that an indoor space that would allow us to bring more traveling exhibits so that every year we could bring something fresh to the zoo. Right now we're very limited in the space in the zoo that allows us to bring in traveling exhibits, but we're always trying to plan ahead and have something new, and the heavy horse exhibit will be that new thing for this coming summer.
Are there renovations going on at the zoo, or was the polar bear area the main renovation you're doing?
Well, that was a biggie, and
Sure,
that
absolutely.
took up a huge piece of the zoo, and so the heavy horse exhibit is now, you can see it under construction just beyond the Journey to Churchill. We're always upgrading things, but for now that's the next sort of visible construction project that's happening in the zoo.
And Shelley and I were fortunate enough we get to travel, basically seeing customers or conventions. That we've visited a lot of zoos across Canada and the States. For the most part, that'd be the areas. And our admission to the zoo is very good price. I mean, I don't know if people totally appreciate it when you look at other zoos and what they're charging.
Absolutely. We are still one of the lowest admission fee zoos in Canada, certainly in North America, if you compare to any U.S. zoo. And we're very proud of that, and we work very hard to keep that reasonable. But, we are now primarily reliant on the revenues that we generate. We do get a very healthy grant from the city, but it goes just a short way to paying for the cost of operating a zoo. And but we work very hard to find other revenue streams to complement admission fees so that we can keep it as reasonable as we can for families. And the membership program is a great bargain for people. Basically, if you visit the zoo 3 times in a year, you will have paid off the cost of a membership. For example, an adult membership's just $65. So,
oh wow,
very reasonable. A family of 5 can have a year's membership for $189. That's the really reasonable financial approach to visiting the zoo.
and I kind of love that idea because Shelley and I want to go to the zoo, but you want to get your money's worth. You want to spend a whole day there or an afternoon there. This you could pop in for 2 or 3 hours and do it several times a year. You don't no pressure.
And the thing about the zoo now, if you haven't been this winter, it is a winter destination now. There are animals that you want to see in the winter now in the zoo. Journey to Churchill, I believe, is at its absolute best in the winter. And so people will want to come back. Don't just think of the zoo as a summer destination anymore. So a membership will absolutely pay off for people, and we really encourage people to explore that option.
We'll be right back with Margaret Redmond after we take this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Normally our show airs Saturday mornings from 8 to 9. We had the honor of being asked to do an extra show for Good Friday, so thanks very much for joining us. Peak of the Market is on Twitter. Follow us at Peak of the Market for recipes and Food and Friends guest updates. We have over 180,000 Twitter followers, and we'd love to have you follow us too. Again, we're at Peak of the Market, or you can follow me at Larry McIntosh. As I mentioned in the first hour of the show, we'd like to invite a lucky listener and their guests to join Shelley and I for dinner. The restaurant we've chosen for this week's contest is the Gates on Roblin. If you'd like to enter your name into a draw to join Shelley and I for dinner at the Gates on Roblin, please email me at larrymcintosh@peakmarket.com by 4 p.m. today. Just put in the subject line Easter, and feel free to put any comments you have or suggestions you have about Food and Friends. We always love to hear your feedback. Feedback is what I was trying to say. If you're the lucky winner, we'll sort out details of the date and time, etc. with you, and we'll make it all work for everybody. Again, if you'd like to enter your name into a draw to join Shelley and I for dinner at the Gates on Roblin, please please email me at larrymcintosh@peakmarket.com by 4 p.m. today, and in the subject line, put Easter. We're back with Margaret Redmond from the Assiniboine Park. So, the Easter weekend, is there lots happening at the park or the zoo? Anything special going on?
Absolutely, and all throughout this spring break week, we are celebrating spring break, and we're going to have a paw print pursuit where you can come and use a map with paw print pictures or footprint pictures and clues to find the animals that correspond to those. We're going to have daily zookeeper talks that will give you a little bit of a sneak peek of the types of zookeeper talks we'll have this coming summer. We're going to have a creative corner in the Tundra Grill where you can do some Easter crafts. And you can meet Winston the polar bear mascot as well. Maybe have your picture taken with him. And one other really neat thing that's happening, we had a Welcome Humphrey the Bear to Manitoba Facebook poll to decide what we should present Humphrey with in terms of a food treat to officially welcome him to Winnipeg.
Oh, I'm excited. Okay, what is it?
The winning Manitoba-inspired treat is fish and berry poutine.
Wow,
Right.
it's got everything covered there.
So you can, if you come to the zoo during spring break, you can see Humphrey enjoying his special treat.
So that starts this weekend, Easter weekend, and goes through.
Right
I
through
forgot
till-
spring breaks next week, of
Right
course.
through
Yes.
to Sunday, April the 5th.
Wow. So there's lots going on.
Yeah.
So what? I mean, you've done a lot in the park in the last several years. You had fundraising campaigns, the Journey to Churchill. The list goes on. What's next?
Well, right now we are in the design process for the new conservatory. A new conservatory was always sort of the third major phase of the master development plan that we embarked on starting in 2010. The conservatory of today is at the end of its lifespan, and so we always knew we had to plan for its replacement. So we've been working very hard to create something that we don't even really want to refer to it as the conservatory because it is unlike anything you will have seen before and is going to be a beautiful signature piece of architecture that will be a celebration of plants. It will be a celebration of biodiversity, but we also are designing it so that it's a celebration of cultural diversity. So people all over the world, we have in common the fact that we rely on plants for medicine and food, spiritual purposes. We want to build a beautiful building that outside in the gardens and inside in the biomes, we will celebrate that connectivity between plants and humans and really create just a very beautiful oasis in our city. And so we're looking forward to introducing that to our community sometime soon. But that's a big focus for us right now.
So this hasn't been unveiled yet?
Not officially,
Not
no.
officially yet. So how long was this in the making coming up with this design?
We've been in the design phase for probably just over 2 years now, and very carefully not just designing it from an architectural perspective, but how this space will be programmed. Why will it be relevant? How will it bring people of all ages and backgrounds and really carry a very important education purpose in our community. It will be a place for celebrations, but it will also be a very beautiful community club in a way.
Yeah, that's got to be quite a challenge, trying to, all the things you've talked about that you want to have in a building. I mean, it's more than just a building, but
Yes.
to put all that into a design had to be a lot of conversations, I would think.
Absolutely. And it started from our purpose of why we believe the park exists, which is to connect people to nature, but also to our commitment in everything we do to have those themes of education and conservation run through that. So it was taking those concepts as we applied them in the Journey to Churchill exhibit in terms of animals, telling a story, to now using plant life and gardens and the beauty of gardens, and a butterfly garden will be a component of that, an inside butterfly garden.
Wow.
And bringing those same things to a horticultural attraction. Again, making it something that is unparalleled in North America. And we've spent a lot of time traveling the world and understanding what it would mean to create something that's unparalleled in North America. And I can't wait to show it to the world.
Is that coming soon?
Maybe.
Well, that's very vague. That sounds very exciting. And there's so much happening in the park. I mean, you named it off in the earlier segment. There's the duck pond. It just goes on and on, all the things. You can go for a concert there. You can go for a walk. You can play cricket. You can, so many people say they're going to the park, and I say, what are you going for? And it varies so greatly what people go to that beautiful spot for.
Absolutely. It's sort of the heart of our city. I really believe that.
How big is it, the park?
It is over 450 acres. It's a very, very large green space.
And I was telling you off air, years ago I did a presentation to get a group to bring their convention to Winnipeg, and I researched it. And the information I had is we have more deer in the city limits in Winnipeg than any major city in Canada, which would make sense when you think about it, the park, right?
Right. We see the deer in the park all the time. I love seeing the deer. Our gardeners are sometimes little not so happy to see the deer. A quick story of when the royal visit was coming. It was in May, and we had planted all the gardens to look our best, particularly in front of the pavilion. And overnight, the deer came and ate it. So sometimes we don't love the deer.
It's nature. We'll be right back with Margaret Redmond after we take this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Please join me tomorrow for our regularly scheduled show, Saturday, April 4th, when my guest will be David Northcott from Winnipeg Harvest. Winnipeg Harvest shares food with over 60,000 Manitobans right across Manitoba every month, and over 27,000 of them are children, which is extremely heartbreaking. My guest today has been Margaret Redmond, President and CEO of Assiniboine Park. This has been a lot of fun. We could easily talk an hour about bears.
Oh, for sure. And you wouldn't be able to stop me. I'm so happy to have been here. Thank you so much.
And there's lots happening over Easter weekend and spring break out of the zoo.
Yeah,
So
check
it out.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being on Food and Friends.
My pleasure.
Thanks to Nicole Bonnycamp, our show's producer, and Riley Rivard, our camera guy. Happy Easter, everybody. Take care, and please don't forget to eat your veggies.